Good evening and a very warm welcome to you all streaming in with us today. This is a project that's organized by the Rotaract Club of Colombo East, one of their main green life initiatives. The project is called Cohabitat, and this is phase one, which would be looking into marine conservation. So let's talk a little bit about marine conservation and understand what exactly it is about. I'm someone who has limited knowledge about what exactly this project is. So our guest speakers today will be enlightening us more about what this topic exactly is. So let me just introduce the guest speaker for today. We have a guest speaker who is deeply passionate about marine conservation. She engages her time by helping in projects with the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society of Sri Lanka. She has done a diploma in aquaculture and aquatic resource management from the Ocean University. So she has also done a very interesting project in Maldives, a marine conservation project, which we will be hearing more about from her. So I would like to invite Miss Aindri Morahela to join us. And if you could kindly turn your camera on.
Hello.
Hello, Aindri. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So if you could just introduce yourself a little and tell us about your profession and what you do with the WNPS.
Yeah, sure. I think you gave like a detailed explanation as to what I do, but um, I'm like literally all the like I'm just not going to say much about what I actually do. But I think all you need to know is that I love anything to do with the ocean, and very passionate about trying to save it.
That's really nice. I know that you're someone who has taken Finding Nemo's quote, just keep swimming, quite literally, because you've been swimming since you were, I think, in grade 3 or so. And it's really nice that you've been using those skill sets even now at this age as well. So I'm just going to ask you, what actually drew you towards marine conservation in particular?
Well, I would say it started when I learned how to dive. So I currently have my rescue diving license. I was more exposed, like obviously when I started to dive, I was more exposed to the habitat destruction and the drastic changes it has caused, which made me want to do something about it. So, like for example, the first time I dived in Maldives was in 2014 or 15. And when I dived again in 2019, the amount it had changed was insane. Like so many dead reefs, not as much like marine life. It was sad. But Maldives also went through an El Nino effect where more than 60% of coral reefs were hit by bleaching in 2016. So it had a lot to do with that as well. But yeah, that's how I got into
So it's
conservation.
very nice that you're passionate and you care so much about marine life, and it's really encouraging as well. I, for one, I can't swim, yet alone dive. So it's a it's something that I would like to work on as well. So I know you have a presentation to show us, but if you could explain what exactly marine conservation is and why it's so important, and explain to our viewers why we're talking about this topic today.
Yeah. So I'll just share my screen. So yeah, marine conservation to me would be protecting all marine species and ecosystems in all like in oceans and seas worldwide, but also mitigating human activities such as overfishing, habitat destruction, pollution, whaling, and other issues that impact marine life and habitats.
So why exactly is it important that we conserve the marine life? I mean, what are the implications that could come about as a result of not taking care of marine species?
Okay, so there is a very long list of common marine conservation issues that we hear and see about today. And many conservationists, scientists, biologists are doing everything they can to bring awareness and reduce the damage to our oceans through these issues. So as we can't speak about all of them, I think we would be focusing on like how we could protect coral reefs. Like that was my experience. I think that's what we will be talking about. So coral reefs around the world are under increased threats, and due to both like local and global stresses, making coral reef restoration more vital to preserve marine resources and local economies.
Right, I see. So there's quite a bit actually that the issues that we face in terms of marine conservation, but I don't think people are aware of it, and that's why we have to do such projects to raise awareness. And I'm pretty sure that's what the WNPS is all about, raising awareness as well. At the same time, helping the marine conservation. So you said that your interest lies in coral reefs. So can you just explain what exactly coral restoration is?
So coral restoration, so coral restoration can be broken into two parts: active restoration and passive restoration. Active restoration would mean where your time, energy, and resources are devoted directly to increasing the coral reef health, abundance, and biodiversity. So its objectives would be to restore habitat and corals which have been lost. Then we have passive restoration, which would be done before considering active restoration. It is mainly creating marine protected areas in order for the reef to revive on its own. But in an increasing number of areas around the world today, the likelihood of preventing any threats to beautiful reefs is minimal. So we have a few marine protected areas around, like our island as well. A good example would be um, Pigeon Island Marine National Park in Trinco, where although there has been a coral bleaching event recently, a certain area on the island was restoring itself. So I would recommend passive restoration like way more than us going and like trying to do something artificial to the reef. And I would recommend it reviving on its own and seeing like, I mean, it would take years, but I think that's a better way of doing it than us going in and putting our hands into it.
I see. So I know that you did a project, a big project in Maldives, and that was a coral restoration project. And so that falls under active, is it?
Yeah.
Active coral restoration, yeah. So can you explain what that experience was like, being in Maldives and
Yeah.
engaging in that?
So I got this opportunity, and it was this project that we were doing at Amaya Resorts in Maldives. So it's done through Reefscapers, where they do coral restoration projects in the Maldives. And so I will go through like the entire process of how we did it, and like how we attach the corals and all of that, and also the coral growth comparison, like for the past 3 years, which is very exciting. Um, I'll just start with the presentation. So these are the frames that we use. This structure is made out of steel and then coated with sand. And so like it allows like good water flow throughout the frame, which is beneficial for the growth of the corals. So at first we would collect corals from a nearby reef that is resilient and tolerant of warming of temperatures and other changes that would hinder the growth of the corals. So these corals are broken down into tiny fragments, which makes it easier for us to like attach it onto the frame. So this species is this coral species is Acropora that we use. It is very resilient and genetically more tolerant of stress. Uh, so at first, um, we use like cable ties to attach these corals, and we are aware that it's not environmentally friendly. So we are finding a better way to attach it and keep the corals in place even during like harsh conditions. But there have been studies where reef managers have used like glue and wedges and different other forms, which haven't really worked well for us. So we're still on the lookout for like environmentally friendly way of attaching these corals.
Right.
Um, So the corals are then attached onto the frame because, yeah, it's attached onto the frame, and there's a small video. It has to be like tightly attached.
So they are essentially tying the corals, is it, on that frame?
The tiny
Ah,
pieces that we cut are like attached onto this frame.
so then over a period of time, the corals start to grow naturally.
It attaches onto the structure and it starts growing.
So what if like there is an issue and it doesn't grow? What happens then?
So yeah, there is a lot of maintenance that has to go when it comes to like doing these coral restoration projects. There have been times where like corals have died even though we expect them to grow, and there's nothing much you can do. So then you need to replace the corals. So by about the first 4 weeks, you would know whether it's going to thrive or die. So then we would replace the corals.
It must be a very difficult time with this pandemic attending to maintaining corals, and it must be hindering the projects, isn't it?
So like anywhere, like obviously there are people at the site, so they do have a look at it, but there's nothing much like that can be done as well.
So, like Maldives, even Sri Lanka is a tourist-based country primarily. And why can't such projects be, can such projects be done in Sri Lanka as well?
Yes, it can. I'll just go to like the last bit of like how we attach it and like put it out to sea, and I'll come to that question. Uh, so yeah, and then the remaining, it's just like the remaining pieces of the ties are cut off. Um, just so that there will not be any like algal buildup on the reef, on the corals. So yeah, and so this entire process needs to be done very fast because we have taken the corals out of their habitat, and they will only survive like that for a very short time. So we select like obviously the location, and for this instance, we were very lucky because the site was right in front of like the property, and it was very close to the shore. So we like tied it onto like a sea bog and used it to transport the frames onto like to where the location was. But you need to consider like ways of how you're going to take these frames to the particular location that you plan to do these projects, because these frames are quite heavy and bulky, and after you attach corals onto them, and you need to do it really fast, so all of that needs to be considered. um, and then we map the coral frames. So we take this underwater, like we take this slate underwater, which is the picture below. We take it and then we mark all the frames that we have in this location so that we can track it accordingly and see the progress in time. So the next few slides are quite interesting. These are the coral growth comparison. We planted these in June 2017, and that is what it looks like now.
It's really cool how much it has actually grown, but I'm pretty sure it has to grow more.
Yeah, a lot
And
more. It's very
yeah,
like, it takes a long time for it to grow, like a very, very long time. But it's small steps and I love it. It's really exciting to see them grow.
yes, it's pretty marvelous how you can do all this, and this is the end result. So you must be very proud of yourself for being part of such an amazing project.
They're literally like my babies.
That's sweet.
But yeah,
So,
so these are few.
all right. So then, is there anything more that you would like to talk about with regard to coral mapping?
No.
So, leading back to my earlier question, can it be done in Sri Lanka?
It can, but sorry. Okay. Yes, it can, but obviously there are a few things you need to consider. It's important to like recognize like that artificial reefs only work in areas where water quality is still conducive to like coral growth. And I mean, there are many factors that come into like the frame, like sunlight. I mean, corals need to grow in shallow water where sunlight can reach them. Then you need clear water. Corals need clear water that lets sunlight through. Um, then you need warm water temperatures. So basically, like in general, corals live in water temperatures of like 20 to 32 degrees. So yeah, then you need clean water. Corals are sensitive to pollution and sediments because sediments can create cloudy water and be deposited on these corals. And obviously, you need salt water. Uh, and yeah, so these need to be considered when doing projects like this. And yeah,
Right.
it can be
That's
done.
right. So I know that at the beginning of the year, somewhere in April, the Sri Lankan Navy initiated a project where they opened an underwater museum in Galle. And what they want to do is to create an artificial coral reef, much like what you did in Maldives. So is this in line with the way that you all have been conducting work? How successful would it be? And how long would it take?
So I would not know how to comment on that because I haven't seen it for myself. But it's really hard to say because it all depends on the water temperatures, and for corals to actually get attached and grow on these artifacts and structures, it would take years. But I was told that there is a lot of marine life in that area already, which is a good sign. So we will have to wait and see.
Okay, thank you. Now, can you just tell me about some of the factors we need to take into consideration when doing projects like this?
Okay, so this is very important, and I'm glad you asked this question because there are many methods and techniques of active coral restoration like available, many of which are very cheap and easy to construct or maintain. But the science behind coral conservation and restoration is relatively new, and these techniques are constantly being improved. And each community or region will find that different techniques are more efficient for them. So adapting to like techniques is essential for success. So it is important to keep in mind that I mean, in any new field, mistakes are bound to bound to be made, but they should not be repeated, I guess.
Yes, I see. Okay, so I think you've pretty much given us an overview about what exactly you do, what marine conservation is, and how you can actually grow artificial corals, right? But now there's a very important question. What skills do you need to have in order to do all that you are doing right now, apart from obviously diving and swimming?
Yeah. Actually, you don't even need to know how to dive, I would say. I mean, you can do you can still be involved in these projects without even knowing how to dive. And honestly speaking, you just need to be passionate about what you want to do, and all else will follow suit. But if you really want to study the subject in Sri Lanka, the only place I know where you can learn anything to do with the ocean, the name gives it away, is Ocean University, where I got my diploma and hoping to get my degree too. But obviously, you can go abroad and I mean do so much with all this information. I mean, you can study like coral restoration or any other course to do with the ocean abroad for sure.
Okay, right. So now, as young people, most of us are watching this today, right? Because we have some sense of care towards the nature and we want to know more about marine conservation. So, what can we as young people do towards helping the environment and conserving marine species?
I would say admire it, but don't touch it. Take sunscreen that don't harm marine life. And yeah, and like be aware of everything, like all the issues that, and also the destruction that we do, and yeah.
All right. So my final question to you, what is the message that you would like to give our viewers today?
I wouldn't be the best person to give advice to anyone because I'm seeking for it myself. But do what you love, and awareness is key. Also, I just love this quote. I think I put it on my presentation in the beginning as well. Um, in the end, we will conserve only what we love, we will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. Yeah.
That was a very inspiring quote, and I, for one, learned a lot from you today. Thank you for imparting so much of knowledge to us and making us more aware about what we can do as young people and the harmful effects of not conserving marine species. So, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a good experience with us too.
Yeah, I hope like someone got something out of this presentation. The most important thing.
Indeed. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so, all right, we have one more speaker, and he too is from the WNPS. So, this individual is actually the head of the subcommittee for the Wildlife and Protection Society. He's an individual with a diverse academic background, ranging from science, marketing, business. And today he will enlighten us about some of the other projects that's done by the WNPS. So, Mr. Graham Marshall, if you could kindly turn on the camera and join us today.
Sashini, can you see me? Thank you. No, I'm not a speaker. I'm just coming in to give you a little perspective on what the WNPS is about. But before I do that, I'd like to thank you guys for your initiative on organizing this. I think such programs always have value, and I'm so happy and proud to see my colleague really delivering what she did with the passion that she did. I'm sure I know in the short time that she interacted, she shared a lot of information, and just goes to show that there is a lot out there for us to do. It's a battle we're all fighting to preserve this beautiful Mother Earth that we all tread on for a very short period of our lives. And people like Aindri, I'm sure, would inspire you guys, and the future is in your hands. You're the next generation. So congratulations, Aindri. I mean, that was fascinating, and I'd encourage you guys to engage her and communicate with all those folks, young folks who are doing some fantastic work in this regard. Now, whilst taking on from where Aindri left off, I think one of the key messages that she left, she said, you can admire it, you can nurture it, but don't touch it. And I think that's one of the, something very simple but very key, that all of us out there who enjoy the beautiful wildlife of this country, which we take very much for granted, should understand that it's meant to enjoy, conserve, nurture. We've got to live, as David Attenborough says, if you watch Netflix, he said with Netflix, the biggest problem is we're trying to make the wild tame, and that's primarily the issue that we're having at the moment. So enjoy it, don't touch it. The wild are there. They own much a part of this earth in as much as we do. We have no right to actually to deprive them of that. So in saying that, the WNPS is, I know the world is probably the oldest conservation organization in this country, 126 years old. And the marine unit is relatively new, but nonetheless very important. As you know, we have about 550,000 square kilometers of sea around us. We have 65,000 square kilometers of land. So there's so much. And, you only have to go back to less than 24 hours ago, and despite under fairly tragic and then subsequently triumphant circumstances, you saw, pilot whales being washed up ashore. You can imagine the type of marine diversity that that this country has around us. So the Marine Subcommittee is there to advocate, to conserve, to educate, and to inspire people to tag along in this journey of conserving our marine resources, which is right around us, 1,300 kilometers around us, which are not only of aesthetic value but of tremendous economic value as well. So in what we do is we educate, we conserve, and one of the things that we're focusing now on, Sashini, is on mangroves, which is essentially an integral part of our total forest cover. It's just 0.3% of our land mass, but it's essentially a total part of our forest cover, but plays such a huge role in things like climate change. Mangroves, massive role. And as Aindri was saying, we're looking at conservation of mangroves. There's a mangrove policy in this country, and getting people aware about, what mangroves do and the type of ecologically and economic value that they bring to this country. And conserving mangroves by itself is not something that you can just go out there and start doing. It's a very scientific process. So that's key on the agenda, and we encourage as many folks that would like to join us in this journey to join. So I'm not going to take too much of your time. Aindri has the show is hers. She's done a fantastic job. I'm sure you can probably throw in a few questions to her. Do join us, and looking forward to engaging you guys as we go along. Thanks again for organizing this.
Thank you so much. Yes. So I'm just going to summarize what we got from today's session. We learned a lot about marine conservation, the harmful effects of not conserving it, what exactly is happening to marine species, and the projects that are done by the WNPS to conserve, particularly about the coral restoration projects that are being done by the WNPS, and also a little bit of background about what the WNPS exactly is. So as young people, I think our take-home message is to love the nature that we have, and always understand that we need to give back to what we have already gotten. And we have to be careful with nature. If not, we will have more catastrophes to deal with. So thank you so much, Ms. Aindri Morahela and Mr. Graham Marshall, for joining us today. And I hope all of you viewers got something important, and it was an evening that was knowledgeable as well as inspiring. So thank you for joining us, and hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. A pleasure, and thanks for organizing this again. All the best in your journey. See you soon. Take care.
Okay.